Welcome to our YPN Home Ownership Day. I'm Ashley Skalsky and I'm the 2021 chair. And we're so excited to have you here and just for a day of educating because we have so much that has happened this last year. And we're here as YPN to just lead our community in education and help you guys get acquainted with what's going on. And today we actually have a really special guest to kick this off. We have Logan Mohtashami, and he is an analyst for HousingWire, and housing economics is his forte. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Logan, you are now going to be on Bloomberg Monthly, correct?
Yes, correct.
Awesome. So that's super exciting. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So he is here to just kick this off, kind of go back to what just happened in 2020 and lead us into the direction of what next? Where do we go from here? So I'm going to kick this off to you, Logan, and we're so excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, what happened last year and what's going to happen this year? I think on a historical basis, 2020 for all of us, not just in real estate, but just in economics in general, we had to deal with the biggest exogenous shock ever recorded in history. But the housing market was the single most outperforming economic sector in the world. So you got to ask why? Why is this happening? Why did housing do so good? So if economics is demographics, and housing economics is driven by demographics and mortgage rates, it should not have been a surprise to anybody how well housing is done. So a lot of my work, has talked about, years 2008 to 2019 being the weakest recovery. And what I mean by recovery, it's not about price. It's about mortgage demand, new home sales, housing construction. But years 2020 to 2024 has the best housing demographics ever recorded in history. And also currently we have the lowest mortgage rates ever recorded in history. So when 2020 came, I think all of us in the real estate industry know that we have a group of conspiracy theory people who run around and say housing is going to crash and home prices are going to drop 30, 40, 50, 60% just to generate clicks. But after 5 weeks, that's all it was. Purchase application data was negative for 5 weeks year over year. Then we started the V-shaped recovery, which actually started in June. So what happened last year is that we had a shock. Our country froze. People started hoarding toilet paper. People started to wonder, what their job situation was like. And after a few weeks, people started to live again. So we had an abnormal low level in economic data. And you can see this, a V-shaped recovery in almost everything except for jobs. And that was housing right there, right? The demographics of housing in years 2020 to 2024, I can give you some reference, is that ages 27 to 33 are the biggest age group ever recorded in history. Right now, we have about roughly 32.5 million Americans in that age group. First-time home buyer median age is 33. We have the biggest amount of replacement buyers ever in our history. And we're also having the lowest mortgage rates on history. So when you come from an economic period where housing wasn't overheating in demand, and you run into this period, you have the biggest amount of replacement buyers. So if people move up, if people move down, cash buyers, investors, you put them all together, housing is going to be stable, right? So that's what happened last year. After a few weeks, we made a V-shaped recovery. You guys can see the existing home sales data. It just went parabolic, right? We had a waterfall dive and it just shot up and it surprised a lot of people. But those of us who believe in demographics know that we just have a lot of people that need shelter. You look at it in that regard. Don't focus on price. Too many people are focused on price and how to make money off of it. If you just look at housing as the cost of shelter to your own capacity to own a debt, because it's driven primarily by primary resident mortgage buyers, it looks normal, and to me, actually, reading yesterday's existing home sales report, COVID-19 actually took demand off for 2020. We should actually have ended the year up higher. I've always talked about, if we don't end the year at 5.71 to 5.84 million in existing home sales in 2020, we're still in makeup demand. So I still think we still have a little bit of makeup demand. And now we're going to go into 2021. So what do we have to look for in 2021? When do mortgage rates rise, right? As a country, we should be rooting for mortgage rates to rise and the bond market yields to go up higher. Why? Because that means a recovery is happening. COVID-19 still has its grip in our economy. There are certain sectors that just simply cannot function anywhere near full capacity. But with the vaccine, you give it some time, give it about 6 or 7 months, the economy will be back somewhat to normal again. And then housing, it's basically a huge battle between demographics and mortgage rates, right? Who's going to win this battle? But I would argue that even when mortgage rates got to 5%, and we all noticed this in California, right? Demand slowed down a bit, especially in the new home sales market. It slowed down. Areas that are high cost areas, California, New York, and certain other parts of the area, it does get an impact when mortgage rates do go higher. But there has been nothing that's been evident of a housing crash outside of the housing bubble, which was speculation debt. 2002 to 2005, existing home sales, total sales were about over 7 million. It dropped. It took 3 years to get down to 4 million. So one way for me to explain why housing is going to be stable, it is very rare in the United States of America after 1996, when mortgage rates went lower again, for existing home sales to even have a monthly sales print under 4 million. So we have basically an economy that can supply 4 million mortgage buyers a year, and any cash buyers, investors, anything, just add on to that. Only 3 times since 1996 did existing home sales have a monthly print under 4 million. It was the tail end of the housing bubble crash, which runs right into my weak demographic patch, the home buyer tax credit, which artificially put sales up higher for about 1 month, and then it came back down, and then 1 month of COVID-19. That was it. So now, in years 2020 to 2024, we just have a lot of people that need homes, right? And the X factor, right? What's the X factor for housing? People working from home, right? For me, it is the most exciting aspect of housing that I'm probably ever going to have in my lifetime, because one of the things that has changed, especially after the housing bubble crash, housing tenure was running at 5 years from about 1987 to 2005, right? Roughly in that time frame. It doubled, right? Part of that is just the function of, we had to deleverage a lot of debt in the housing market. Part of it is a function of age. Baby boomers are staying at their homes much longer. Move-up buyers just simply didn't have enough equity. But people have been living in their homes for a very long time. A lot of that is based on they need to live near their work. If it is true, if this model actually happens where 14 to 23 million people in America need to actually move away to buy a house that they want and can work from home, it's the most exciting aspect of the housing market. And I'm always skeptical of anything that happens in a crisis. I remember after 9/11, people said, well, nobody's going to travel ever again like they used to. That didn't happen. So it's right to be skeptical of this stay-at-home model, but if it comes true, you are going to get for the first time in many decades, a new variable that'll get people to move. Whether it's not even just people leaving from California to go to Boise, Idaho, or go to Tennessee, or go to Texas. You can even get people that live in San Francisco and just move 40 miles east. So this is the most exciting thing, and I think for all of you, keep an eye on it, because if people can work from home, that solves a lot of issues for a lot of people, especially young families who, I always say, take a look at the San Francisco condo market. You saw a lot of condos starting to go up more than single family, because if you are living in a $1.5 million condo in San Francisco, that's only 1,000 square feet. You just move 50 miles east and you get yourself a nice house. And we even see that in Orange County. Hey, Newport Beach pricing is much different than Rancho Santa Margarita. So don't think of this as just a state to state move, but just think of it in general, that if this comes true, this will be the biggest housing event of our lifetimes, because it is a brand new variable, but we need to see the evidence first. And looking into 2021, the demographic patch right now, actually from 2021 to 2022, is the single 2 best years ever in our history, right? Ages 29 is the biggest. So when you get into that median home buyer age, 30 and 31, you've got the most amount of people that age group. Now in 2010, the biggest home buyer age was 19, right? So when I always talk about housing was going to have a weak recovery, people were too young and people were too old, right? Housing economics is based on a certain age group of buying homes. I always use this same line over and over again at every conference. Uh, People rent, they date, they mate, they get married. 3.5 years after marriage, they buy a house, or they live somewhere bigger, and they have kids. That's kind of how we've operated for many, many years. There's a State Farm commercial basically making fun of a guy who says, "Hey, I'm single. I'm never going to get married," because he's at a party. And next line, he's getting married. Tells his wife, "I'm never going to have kids." Next line, he's going to have kids. People function a certain way for many, many decades. That never changed. So the notion that millennials don't buy homes, biggest home buyers in America right now are millennials, which means the biggest home buyers in the world are millennials. Or millennials don't get married. Yes, they do. They get married a little bit later when they don't have kids. Yes, they do. They have kids, right? Birth rates are, even though they've been falling for the last few years, when you adjust it to demographics, people are normal, right? The student loan debt crisis, something that I've actually focused on for many, many years. If we had a student loan debt crisis that prevented millions of Americans of buying homes, why is purchase application data rising every year? If we had an affordability crisis, why is purchase application rising every year since 2014? If all of these were true, 2020 would not have happened. Mortgage rates are low, demographics are great. If you just focus on those two things and take the noise away, and I understand, if you listen to the media, if you go on Twitter Finance, or you listen, people say, "Hey, Americans are too broke. They don't have enough money. They don't have a down payment. They have too much student loan debt." If you believe in that, guess what? 2020 should have never happened. And now it's different. This period in time in our history is different. So you know your buyers, you know mortgage rates are going to go up eventually. I think you adjust to that reality. But I've got the highest level of the bond market for me, the 10-year yield, which is a big mover of mortgage rates, about 1.94%, just because COVID is going to still be with us. That is about 3.75%. That's like the highest I can see the 10-year yield going. And if we go higher than that, that just means our economy is even doing better. So we're still far away from where I would see that it would be detrimental to the California market or just the national market. Because one thing that's really important to talk about, mortgage rates kept on going lower because even though the 10-year yield was going higher, a lot of people were confused about that. They think, why aren't rates higher right now? Remember, we had a mortgage market meltdown in March. It's something I tweeted actually on that day on March 9th, talking about, "Boy, we're gonna have a rough patch in the mortgage market," just because the function of doing mortgages as a business got hit. So mortgage rates actually were never really priced during the crisis. We should have got to about 2.25 on the 30-year fix. We never got there. So even though the 10-year yield, the bond market was rising since August 2nd, mortgage rates kept on falling down because mortgage rates are starting to get priced better now because risk is out of the system. And I think that's an important thing, because a lot of people are confused. Why aren't rates higher now with the bond market? So don't think of mortgage rates just skyrocketing anytime soon, but over time, every month as the vaccine keeps on happening and more people, every time where we could reopen more and more part of the economy, the 10-year yield should rise, mortgage rates should rise. And it's good, because you know what? The number one problem we have right now in housing: inventory is too low, demand is too strong, home prices are breaking out. So this is my biggest fear for always in years 2020 to 2020. It wasn't demand, right? It wasn't these housing bubble boy crashes that have been grifted for the last 6-7 years. It's that real home prices adjusting to inflation, the equivalence of rent, has the ability to take off. And for me, it's anytime nominal home prices go above 4.6% on a national basis, it's not healthy. And we have an unhealthy situation, because when inventory is this low and demand is this good, right? We didn't have this problem really in 2008 to 2019. And mortgage rates could stay lower for longer now because of COVID. We have the problem of home prices taking off. And we saw that pretty much the last 4 or 5 months of 2020. People were so worried about these epic crashes. No, I was worried about the exact opposite, and that's what occurring. So we want mortgage rates to go up. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but we need to find balance. And let me tell you something, we're never going to build enough homes in this country to ever suffice everyone's need or appetite. That's just how we are. Mature, older economies do not have construction booms unless they majorly deficit finance to try to push home prices down. It just never happens. People will talk about this until the end of their days. We just will never build enough homes. So the potential of home prices accelerating in 2020 it is an issue. And this is why I'm rooting, and everybody should be rooting for higher mortgage rates, because we want balance, right? In 2013 and 14, I think all of you that were here in California, what had happened? Housing was coming back. Everybody was excited. The 10-year yield went up higher, mortgage rates up higher, everything cooled down quickly, right? That was a very fast 1% move. And home prices back then were running at 10% year over year, cooled down, right? Didn't crash, nothing ever bad happened, but it just cooled itself down. Existing home sales ended the year a little bit under 5 million. Even with that, housing was stable. 2018 and 2019, mortgage rates got to 4.75 to 5%. What happened? Housing, home prices, real home prices went negative in 2019. Nobody knows this. I talk about this all the time. They're like, what? No, nominal home prices increased barely, but real home prices, that was exactly what the housing market needed. A little bit of cooling down, because from 2012 to 2020, home prices had a lot to gain to get to per capita incomes. You might hear these things, median income to median home prices, things aren't affordable. If you look at the national data, per capita income was always higher than home prices. This is why home prices have been rising for many years, but we're kind of at that level to where they're about to cross. So it is very crucial that we see higher mortgage rates to stabilize the market. Right, that's what we want. We want to stabilize the market, and all of you at some point will have to adjust to that reality, because what we're seeing right now is a dangerous combination of the two things that actually drive housing more than anything. Demographics are the best ever, lowest mortgage rates ever. You put those two together, this is the one unique period of time in our history that both of the best things in housing are colliding with each other. And it's good for demand. We saw that last year. Think about it. We had a global pandemic that basically shut down our economy, shut down the world economy. Within 5 weeks, housing recovered. Why? People need homes, right? To stay away from the conspiracy theories about housing. It's all about demographics. So we should push for higher rates. We should want to see it. It's nothing about it. So it's just the economy. So when the data actually moderates, and that's a big theme of mine since August of 2020, existing home sales have gone parabolic. That's not normal. This is housing. Housing data is very sticky. So these monthly sales data will fall eventually, because I think we ended the year at 5.64 million. We just had a 6.76 million print on existing homes. That's a big gap between where trend sales are going and what the monthly print. So when it comes down, you're going to hear people go, oh no, housing's about to collapse. Look, these monthly sales data are coming low. Just remember, that's the gimmick, right? That's what they always do. Anytime they see a monthly sales come down, they go, oh, here it is. Here comes the big crash. No, we should see existing home sales get down to about 6.2 million, or even a little bit under that. And we're still above what the trend was in 2020. So be careful of reading too many headline sensationalism housing prints. Just remember that we have a very unique period of time for a lot of people who just need shelter. And just remember, this time in history, it's with social media and everything out there, as you can see, bad information does get out. So for myself, because my family's been in the mortgage business since 1987. I retired from that industry last year. All I do is look at economic and housing charts, right? So if you have any questions, like if I do my jobs correctly, you guys could eventually finish my sentences for me, and you guys really know who the con artists are in the housing market. My name, loganmohtashami.com, Twitter, Instagram. Any questions you have, especially on Insta stories where I go on these videos, you do that and basically ask away. I will answer everything, even in a video, just to make things simple for all of you. But don't ever forget, when it comes to housing, it's all about economics, and economics is driven by demographics and productivity, but housing, especially demographics and mortgage rates. And we're going to be stable for a few years. That's why I use the term replacement buyers. I hate using the term boom. Well, I like to use the term replacement buyers. We have the biggest amount of replacement buyers ever in our history. So we'll be good, but let's just see how the market reacts when mortgage rates do go higher.
Thank you so much, Logan. This was absolutely the most informative piece of information that I have heard in a while. And I feel that it's so credible, you know, because we've gotten so many conflicting messages, and it just is nice to have your 2 cents and your expertise here to really lead us through that. So thank you so much.
And you're welcome. And remember that economics done right is terribly boring. If people are
Okay.
trying to make economics really exciting, they're doing something wrong. Economics is terribly boring, and that's, you know, when somebody's doing it right.
Well, thank you for putting a smile on it. We appreciate it. Makes it much more engaging.